There we go. We're live. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I'm back with the team, Alima and Dave. So, how you doing? How you doing, everyone?
Pretty good.
I don't want to say. I'm always still getting down those. Like the same as I talk to my students, I never know how to talk to the collective. In our yoga class, they say, "How you doing, you beautiful people? How are you doing?"
That works.
I'd love to be called that every
Yeah.
day.
Well, that's just a forgive. That's just a given. You're both beautiful
thank
people,
you.
so
Thank you.
especially you, Dave.
Oh, rude. No. But thank you everybody for coming out. It's welcome back to Social and Emotional, where tonight we are going to be talking about people's confidence in reaching their own dreams. So as you already know how this goes, if you've seen this before, we put out a survey to our students, asking some questions to try and get some data back so that we can address it here tonight.
Yeah, and this is our last show of the 2021 calendar year, and we'll be back again in January. So hope everyone has a great, relaxing end of the month. Happy holidays to everybody out there. Make sure you stay safe and healthy going through the new year. And hopefully 2022, we get this whole thing figured out, because 2021 just kind of picked up on the heels of 2020 in many regards. So we talked about goal setting, and which is a part of the SEL concept, which is self-management, kind of knowing yourself and then being able to set goals for yourself. So we talked about the confidence in individual ability to accomplish goals and reaching their dreams, which many of the students surveyed agreed or strongly agreed, better than 50%. And then about, a third were in the neutral category. So not surprising that, teenagers would feel a sense of, confidence in themselves and have that level of optimism. So not a very surprising thing there. I am realistic when setting my goals, which 70% agreed with, and another about 18% strongly agreed with. So again, that's not too surprising. Again, the optimism kind of bleeding through there. When setting goals, I consider the obstacles I may face. There were about, I would say around 16, 17% disagreed. The large percentage, 54%, agreed, with about 30% strongly agreeing. So again, they seem to be thinking about those things according to, again, the data. We'll get into the specifics on that. And then I feel comfortable asking for help from others, parents, friends, teachers, etc., when I am unable to handle a situation by myself. This one was a little more interesting. We had 36%, the largest number, who said neutral. 22% said yes, 11% said strongly agree, and then 18% disagree, and 13% strongly disagree. So about 30% say, admitted to really not feeling comfortable asking for help when they need it, especially when working towards a goal. And then we had an open-ended response. Or no, we had one more here. Oh, self-talk. This is a concept. Self-talk is the act of practice of talking to oneself, either aloud or silently and mentally. Generally, negative self-talk makes us feel worse, and positive self-talk makes us feel better because it triggers problem solving and helps us remind ourselves of making mistakes as a part of life. Which best describes your self-talk? So we had, I am mostly negative, making myself feel worse. That was a small percentage, about maybe like 8 or so percent. I lean more towards the negative, was 11%. I am sometimes positive and sometimes negative. That was 55%. I lean towards the positive is 15.7, and then I am mostly positive, looking to solve the problem and accept my mistakes, is 13.4. So almost like an even split all the way. Leans a little bit positive, but most people are right there in that neutral zone. And then we have how do you feel about your ability to accomplish your goals and reach your dreams, which was an open-ended response, which we might be able to get to a couple of those. So just overall, in the spirit of the new year, where people start talking about New Year's resolutions, we thought it was a good idea to talk about goal setting. And even during times like we're in right now with the pandemic, we still need to set goals. We still need to have something to work towards, both short-term and long-term.
Yeah.
And I think that helps us get through the difficult times, especially when you have those short-term goals with a longer-term goal in mind. I think that's important.
And just to throw it out there, I know I made a face. I cringed at the sound of like New Year's resolution because in my experience with New Year's resolution, I always find that a lot of people set them and then when they can't accomplish them or they have a setback or they meet an obstacle, then it's like they feel as though they've ruined their whole year
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they were unable to follow through with
Mhm.
this one resolution. So before we even get into this part, just know that like when we're talking about goal setting and we're thinking about like the new year starting, like making positive changes is something that you should be considering and
Right.
not even just like setting a new year's resolution. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of fan some of that stuff out as we talk about the topic today.
Yeah, I think even as well as far as New Year's resolutions, it's such an easy thing to fail at, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they're usually quite lofty for most people. And then once you've failed at one thing that you want to try and do, it's a domino effect, and
Right.
more than likely you're going to fail at the next. And self-talk for me, growing up, I was the worst. That was probably the last 15 to 20 years has been, and I'm old, I'm really old now, but the last 15 to 20 years has really been where I really need to stop calling myself those names every single time I mess up or I drop something or I don't do something quite perfect.
Mhm.
You know, some of that self-talk that we would get from here or there, I continued that. I continue to parent myself with that conversation, with those words, that language that I would use. So, you know, someone would only have to say it, you know, in those formative years. And I would argue that the formative years go way past the age of 7 years old. You know, it's where there's something lacking. There's where there's someone talking to you and, you know, they don't handle the situation correctly. I didn't handle a situation correctly growing up. And, you know, it's if someone of authority saying those things to you, you start to believe that, well, they know better than me. So internally, that wasn't a conscious thought, but I think subconsciously, I thought to myself, they're older than me. They obviously know that something's not right. And I must be like a jerk or not, you know, doing the right thing. So they must be correct. So I continued that self-talk even when they weren't around anymore, as a young adult. And I'll hold back the tears because I'm evolved now. I'm evolved. I'm not the same individual I used to be.
You mentioned formative years. I'm just interested. What would you consider? I want to hear from both of you, and then I'll give mine as well. What would you consider to be formative years? What? Give me a age range.
There's science, which I think is like what, 2 to 7, 3 to 7, something like.
Developmental stage wise.
Yeah.
I'm not using science. By the
Yeah.
way, was my answer. What do you personally think?
I will go from my own experience. So when I started thinking for myself finally, which was maybe 16, 17, 18, those were like the dip off that, and even still, I hang out with individuals that greatly affect and have a knock-on effect with my own life as well to this day. For that, I would still argue some of it is still going on because,
Right.
you know,
But where would you say the core of your personality was shaped
for me,
between what age range?
for me, it was definitely, like the 12, I'm going to say a large gap here. I'm going to say like 12 to 21 because
Okay, that's
I
not
was,
a large gap. Mine's gonna be bigger than that.
because I was an apprentice as well when I was 21.
Yeah.
So I was still learning and
That's
taking on.
yeah,
And,
that's not
you know,
unreasonable. What do you
and,
think, Halima?
yeah.
We're gonna go to you first because now I'm like I'm still trying to think about this and I'm like I need a second.
Okay. I would say I usually give like a 10-year window where if I had to, I would probably lean more towards like, I think 12 is a good number, even like 10. I would say middle school age up to about 24, 25, I would say even. You got to, I would go through.
No, I would agree.
I would go through the high
agree.
school years,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the college years, and then your early years out of college.
Absolutely,
If someone's
Yeah.
going for 4 years,
Yeah.
just because you're going to be shaped by your middle school, definitely, because that's where you're going to be growing most socially.
Yeah.
High school is going to be the academic side, maybe some sports, and also the social aspect of it.
Mhm.
College is like a sense of independence in a way, figuring out kind of maybe more nuanced to be where you are, and you're being shaped by that level of independence that you might have. And then starting a job and a career or moving out and finding that level of independence is definitely going to shape you too, based on your successes and failures, relationships. It could be all that. So all of those things. And I agree, Andrew. I think that definitely people are still shaped beyond that and
Yeah.
even before that. It's just that I find that for a personality to be shaped, I think once you get to that level, 25-ish, it's kind of like, all right, you wouldn't be viewed as like a kid. You still hear people call
Hmm.
like high school or college level kids. They'll say the kids 21. They're just a 20-year-old kid.
Yeah.
They're just a kid. They just came into the NFL. They're just a kid. They're
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that when you're 17, you don't think of 22 as a kid. But even looking at myself at 22, I was definitely a kid. 23, still a kid. 24, you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. I
Am
mean,
I a kid right now?
right, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But your personality was probably mostly kind of solidified to a certain degree, and obviously things can change. But it's just something that's interesting, I think, for especially students who may be watching or teenagers who may be watching to understand that you're in the midst of it, though. As far as Andrew and I will get to Lee in a second, but you're not at the end. You're still
No.
figuring things out, so you don't have to have a lot of the responses in here about goal setting was almost like doom and gloom, like I got to have this figured out
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And we're just need to let you know, like, you do not need to have it figured out right now at all. And that's completely normal to just think to yourself, I don't know what I want to be, and I don't know what college I'm going to go to, and I don't know what career. That's completely normal. And by no means will you be left out
No.
or worse off for it. You might even be better off for it
Yeah.
because you're allowing yourself flexibility to kind of go with the flow a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, so now thinking about it, how you say, like, I would say fourth grade, like, that's when it was like I really started to like really find myself, but it was before that. My dad put me on an all boys soccer team when I was like first starting to play sports,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the only girl and I was the only person of color on that soccer team.
Wow.
And I can remember that because I cried and I didn't want to go
Mm-hmm.
after the first day, and he told me, like, what's the problem, why won't you do this? And I said, because I'm different than them. And he was like, guess what, you're going to be different than everyone.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be different than
Right.
everyone. And I think that that was something that like shifted me, it shifted my thinking even at that early age,
Yeah.
because he let me know that that was okay. So I think that I really started, again, when do you start playing soccer? Like, how old are you? That I still
Yeah, you
remember
could
that. I
start
don't even
super
know.
early.
Now,
It could be
now, do
kindergarten,
you
first
look
grade.
at sorry, do you look at that as a move of genius at the time, or like what's your opinion of that looking back?
Again, in the moment, I despise my dad. Like,
Yeah.
I was so mad at
Yeah.
him. But again, I still have that picture, and when I look at it, I'm like again, I think that that played a role in who I am today,
Yeah.
because it's like it's okay to be different, and
Yeah.
I'm in situations where I'm sometimes the only person of color, and that's just the way that it is, and I
Yeah.
got to make the best of whatever the situation is, you
As
know.
as an architect of children, I think that was a bit of a genius move, but a tough move for a father
Oh,
to
absolutely.
or a parent to do. So yeah.
It
Wow.
also taught me to run people over. So, I mean, it all paid off. Thanks, Dad. But again, I think that you guys make a point in saying that it could start very early and
Yeah.
it can
Oh,
continue on. And like Mr. Ritchie said,
Amira, thank you, Amira. I
hey,
love you
Amira.
guys. I love you too.
It definitely continues on, because I still feel like
Thank you.
now being in a different role as like a school counselor and being now a mom and being a wife, like I feel like there's just more
Oh,
parts
absolutely.
of me.
Yeah.
I'm growing in so many different ways,
Mhm.
you know? So keep it, you're going to grow, you're going to change, and you're going to want different things, and that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point that Lima brings up about the idea that you're going to hit different milestones at different points in your life, and that's completely okay. Too often we look at everybody else and we say, oh, this person's getting married then, and this person's doing this at this point, and this person's going to college. What if I don't want to go to college right away? Or what if I want to transfer? What if I don't graduate by 22? There's so many different factors that you can't get bogged down with all that kind of stuff. You just have to say, like, what's best for me? What's my path going to be? And just allow yourself the flexibility and the confidence in yourself to say, no matter what, I'm going to be okay. And it
Yeah.
might not take the same amount of time. It might not be the direct route to get somewhere, but as long as I'm moving in a direction and I'm going to wind up where I want to be, then that everything will be worth it. So
Yeah.
don't force yourself to be at a certain point just because other people are. Like Alima's situation, that's unique to her. So if you find that, by 16 you don't have it all figured out and your friend doesn't mean anything.
No.
By 21 your friend's, getting married or having a kid or whatever, doesn't mean anything. Like it's everything is different. So as you start to see yourselves separate and hit different milestones and do different things. And some people will start careers at 22, other people will still be in school at 22.
Yeah.
You can't sit there and say, oh my God, what am I missing? I can't work yet and I got to go through another couple of years of school to get to my goal or my dream.
But I think
That's
that,
fine.
and I think that that goes back to the self talk, which was another
Right.
element that you brought up, right? And you talked about the
Mm-hmm.
fact that so early on you had these negative things that may have been coming your way and how that impacted you and how you kind of kept those thoughts ruminating in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So then now you're constantly comparing yourself to people, trying to figure out why you're not in the same places and trying to figure out how to get there. And that becomes the negative self talk that
Yeah.
we often hear our kids saying. We have it ourselves, and it just happens so frequently. And it's very difficult to come out of that like whole idea and the negativity that we have within ourselves.
What's your self-talk?
Yeah, I am negative, and if my husband's out there right now, he's gonna be like, his favorite line to me is stop talking badly about my wife.
Yeah.
Talking to me, he's like,
Yeah.
stop talking badly about my wife. And
Love
it's
that.
sometimes I get into the place, and it's a lot of just old self-esteem issues that sometimes come up, and body image issues. And yeah, I don't look the same way that I looked when I was 23. And he's like, honey, but you're not supposed to, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, again, it's like, I know those things. And for everyone out there, that's irrational thinking. Like, we all have some sort of rational thinking that exists for us, but the most, like, the positive thing that you have to do is assess that it's irrational and figure out how to deal with it. It's like, I'm happy to have him because he definitely does call me out on it when I'm doing it, because sometimes I do it so freely and openly that I don't even realize it, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's something that you have to consciously work at and constantly think about.
Yeah, it's I battle with my younger self probably daily. Less when I meditate. Little trick for you. But lately I've just had a long plethora of a long list of things to do, and it's taken me away. Instead of getting up at 4 and meditating, I've been getting up at 4 and doing other stuff just to kind of make the deadlines, the school podcast, and all of these bits and pieces, grading, and yeah, just all of these deadlines. But then what happens is if I'm left alone with myself, I don't need anyone else to make my life misery. You know, I could just see someone could look at me the wrong way, someone could look at me the right way, and they're through their mind they're thinking, oh, I think I left the milk out. I'll catch their face just when they're thinking that. Next thing you know, I've really done something to upset them. What have I done?
Yeah.
And it doesn't spiral out of control, but I have been in that position where if I drink too much coffee because I'm trying to get stuff done, next thing you know, it's like,
But again, it's that lens, right? That lens that we're constantly looking through. And as much as, and again, jumping back really quickly to social media, the lens that we're looking through when we're posting things on social media and when people are putting things out there, it's all these like rose colored glasses.
Yeah.
But then if you take a step back and they're not looking through that lens at that specific moment in time that they're capturing, it's like, what really are you feeling internally, and what are you battling and trying to deal with?
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to, put out into the universe. And I know that whole old saying, fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
Like, you may just be trying to do that, but sometimes it's like, but are you really dealing with the actual conflict and what you need to be addressing?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the, go ahead.
As we're talking, Amira said, and I don't even know, but supportive spouses, because she said, I love you, Mr. Put Up, and then Michael says, it's easy when your spouse is supportive of you as well. Very true. And Amira says, oh, gushes. So, but look, I mean, that is why I'm 3 times married, which is this whole podcast. Today's topic is one of the foundational reasons as to why all of this was started about 7 or 8 years ago in the first place. I had 170 big life questions, and a lot of those questions were based around the future. What am I going to do next?
Yeah.
Am I going to be okay? Is this going to work out? And it was just everything's going to be fine. I told everyone the other day, and I said this the other week, that look, all of you could leave school right this moment. I don't advise it, because if you stay at school and you put in some effort, you'll leave with such trajectory in life. But honestly, if you leave, you're going to be fine. Things are going to work out. They won't work out if you sit around and do nothing and play games all day. But well, even then, my son almost proved me wrong by being very good at playing games. Then he would win money. Then he started making his own games.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about perspective.
But I think it's important too, and I think a good exercise sometimes is just kind of thinking to yourself, uh, and reminding yourself of what you like about yourself, right? The idea of
Hmm.
like, what's my favorite thing about who I am that I can sit there and say, you know what, I'm glad I'm this way,
Hmm.
and then it tries to dwindle some of the negative a little bit. Like for me, we would go around and say something about it, but and then everybody at home, if you want to chat, like, what do you like about yourself? What's your favorite thing about who you are, personality, whatever. Like I like my sense of humor. Like
Hmm.
I like the way, and my family is very much like that. We're very like self-deprecating humor, and just like
Yeah.
we laugh a lot and we joke at each other. My friend group is like that as well. And like it goes with like wit and the whole humor, that whole thing, to try to like have a laugh
Yeah.
about things, you
Yeah.
know. And I like that, like whether it's like my Irish side or whatever. I just like love that about like my personality, and then like the people I surround myself, that we all have that kind of same interest. So that alone is very easy to kind of utilize for other things that might be negative, right? Because I already have it built in of like, all right, it's not that big a deal. Like,
Hmm.
because I can make fun of myself too,
Yeah.
right? Instead of taking everything so personally, it's like whatever. Like I don't care. Like I'll make fun of like, oh, what the hell shirt is this? Like, what are these things up here? I don't know. Like, why are there buttons up there? But and I have things in my sleeve, so I don't even know what the hell they are. And I don't even know where I got this from. It says the UK on it, so I don't know. I think
You're
I took it out of
welcome.
your
You're
closet.
welcome. You're welcome,
But
Dave.
it's just an idea of like it's not, it's don't take ourselves so seriously is like kind of like how I operate. So I'm glad I'm that way. I don't know.
At some point I turned into I'm a self-professed engineer. I have a wide array of interests, and I love delving into anything and everything. And part of some of the engineers that I personally know, not only in our family, but also of myself, as I've noticed, I can be very black and white. I can be very non emotional at times about things. Something will happen, and I will say I can be, I'm almost proud about it that I can be bluntly truthful
Hmm.
about something, or not have to worry about building up the courage to say something. I will just say it
Yeah.
and deal with the ramifications
Hmm.
later, you know? And sometimes that works out and sometimes that doesn't, especially when it's dealing with other people.
Right.
But
I get that though. I
yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
And I,
So,
and
but
I and I think it's a good thing too, though, to be like it's the
it's
only
good if
reason it
you,
comes across as brutal is because it's something that you know is going to be faced with some kind of negative
yeah,
reaction.
yeah.
The basis of it is honesty. That's what you're
Mm,
saying. You're saying
mm,
I'm honest,
mm,
but sometimes the truth can be brutal to somebody, right?
yeah,
It could be hurtful for some. And if you're just saying, look, it's not like if I'm grading a paper and I write on it, this is no good. Like you don't want me to write on there, this is okay, and you know what I mean. Like, and I have to be like worried about like no, it's like this could be better. Like this isn't your best work. Sometimes people need to hear that
yeah.
at certain points, and obviously now with the PC stuff, it's very difficult to kind of navigate
Hmm.
that ground where it's like, I want to help you, but I can't be honest with you without hurting your feelings. So now I feel like I can't, be as honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes me to, it's kind of on topic, but kind of off. Sorry out there. Like the different parts of the mind. So like there's something called with like DBT therapy, it's called like the wise mind. And it's like there is a like factual, reasonable part, and then there is an emotional part, and then you meet in between like a Venn
Hmm.
diagram. And it's like, again, we always want to try to function in that middle part,
Hmm.
but so many times it goes more towards the emotional part, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what you're
Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah.
right? But I think that also when we're setting goals, like we have to think about that, the emotional part of it. Like, what is your real reasoning behind
Yeah.
wanting to do it? Like, what are the feelings, thoughts, and behaviors and patterns behind wanting to do it? And then assessing, like, factually, am I capable of doing this based on this? Right.
Right.
And I think that it's hard for people to think about the black and white because then sometimes they have to come to terms with what is true,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I had I planned I started a YouTube series 2017 of building a 8 foot long electric powered wooden boat big enough for one person, and never built a boat before. And my plan was to take it all across America, New Jersey to Seattle, Washington, and meet people along the way. and shake the hand of the guy that inspired me. And at the time, there was a gentleman that we used to communicate quite often, and I dropped the ball a couple of times. And but what happened was, I knew that based on the number of days left for the deadline, I had to adjust. And the boat wasn't going to be this amazing work of art that I was hoping it to be. At some point, I just had to slap some paint on the thing and go. And it looks okay in the end. But this individual, a craftsman, was very disappointed, and he kind of dropped off the face of the planet. But that was his expectations kind of being projected onto me. You know, it's you got to think on your feet, and sometimes you got to adjust your sails. And boating references there, you're welcome. And to all of the no sailors out there,
nautical terms.
Yeah, but you know, it's sometimes you might have these plans, but you might have to adjust them based on what you have available.
All right, Alima, what's your favorite thing about yourself?
Favorite thing, how much I encourage people, and how hard I love people and things. I think that's my favorite thing
Passion.
about myself.
Yeah, that's good. And those are attributes that obviously benefit others as much as yourself, which is good. And I think for all of us, that is something like our attributes are things like, whether it's humor or, you know, the artistic side, it's all those things can be beneficial and motivational to other people as well, which is, I think, is a good thing. Going into some of the goal setting, you know, one of the things they talk about is, you know, SMART goals. People may have heard of that before: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And we talk about, it doesn't have to, and the thing is, we're talking about this as we get to the end of the year and as we have like New Year's, but I also find it kind of silly to have these New Year's resolutions, because oftentimes it's like one of the worst times of the year, especially like in New Jersey, to try to start something new, because it's cold and it's dark and it's all these different things. You're not necessarily, and most of the time, let's face it, it's something fitness or weight loss based, typically, right?
When I'm like, I'm eating all the cookies.
Right, exactly. There's all this leftover food
and having
Christmas
all the beverages.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, and it's on New Year's, like everyone's going out on New Year's Day. You're like, I don't want to work out today, or nor eat healthy, nor walk or move.
I mean, it's funny that we're actually talking about this, because this year actually is going to be the year that I lose those last 10 pounds.
Yeah. So I often try, you know, it's so funny because like almost every Monday I'm like, I'm starting it this week, and like every Sunday I'll just like get gluttonous, and then Monday I'm like, and then I'm just like, Monday I'm like, all right, there's a salad, and I'm like, by Tuesday I'm like, screw it, next week's fine, whatever, you know. But I think the point is, and I've always used this, and I have my weight's always been fluctuating. It's like ridiculous. I go like a 30-pound spin. Like I could lose 30 pounds. I'll just like starve myself unhealthily, but then I'll just gain it back.
Thank you for admitting that.
Yeah, it is very unhealthy, but it's basically just starvation. It's like it's like being on Survivor, essentially. Yeah.
Don't do that.
No, I'm just eating grass or something. Paper. So it's funny because one of the students even identified that in here. Like, I want to lose weight, and it was like go from 280 to 200. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, saying something like that is great. That's a goal, but you can't look at it and say to yourself, I'm going to lose 80 pounds. Right. You have to say to yourself, you're going to lose what? 1 pound.
Yep.
Right. So you're just going to say, I'm not going to lose 80. I'm going to lose 1 by this date. That's the idea of like making it specific, measurable, achievable, right? And time bound. So you could always say to yourself, all right, by the end of this week, if my overall goal is 80 pounds, I might say to myself, okay, on day 1, I'm going to work out. It's got to be an all-encompassing thing, by the way. Most of these achievements and goals that we want need to be beyond just one activity.
Right.
It has to be fitness and diet and sleep and less stress. It has to, there's a magnitude of things that keep going beyond. So you can't just sit there and I'm going to go to the gym. You go to the gym for an hour and you stop at McDonald's on the way home and you buy like $20 worth of food.
I've done that.
And then you eat it before you get home. And you're
or
like,
a tray of donuts.
Right. But it's like, you just kind of like, what the hell was the point? So there you have to kind of go into it and saying, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, but then what am I going to eat when I get home? So when I get back, I know I have food, as opposed to, oh crap, what am I going to eat? I'm hungry. I'm tired. I don't want to go make something for myself. I don't even know what's in the house. I'm already out. Let me just stop somewhere real quick. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of like work really hard for an hour and then eat really bad. And then you didn't you didn't lose any weight or you didn't accomplish anything. So we have to kind of understand that part of this is to have a plan that is specific, measurable, but the achievable part is, I think, important and real. You have to be realistic.
But I
Yeah.
You
think,
can't lose 80 pounds in a week,
and I
right?
think with saying that, it's also just like, okay, then can I implement something that maybe I'm not doing? If I wasn't going to the gym, maybe it's not to lose 80 pounds, but I'm going to start going to the gym, maybe just going once a week.
Yeah.
And just giving yourself like just positive changes that you're going
Hmm.
to implement instead of this big, huge thing that may just roll over you, you know? So that's definitely a
Yeah,
good point.
setting up those positive practices, setting yourself up for success, setting up a routine,
Yeah.
getting all the. I literally wrote a book on this and broke down every single diet, because I've done it all just through my diabetes, and so yeah, it's just the fact sometimes even just going to the gym and sitting on the bike, even if you do 2 minutes of nothingness, the fact that you even got yourself to the gym is better than at home thinking about going to the gym. There's so many ways to set yourself up for success, but food prep throughout the week,
Yep.
and
Yep.
good diet, and
Yeah, keep the things you want to eat in the home, and
Yeah,
don't
that's
go
it.
to the store and buy stuff you don't want to eat. Like you have to kind of, one of the hardest parts I find, even for myself, is the ability to regulate yourself, right? To
Hmm.
have the discipline to
I
hold
literally have
yourself to
none.
it,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
literally have
so,
none.
and we all have our vices, and we're all going to have issues of like, man, I really don't want to have this to eat. I really am craving that, chocolate, whatever. Again, there's certain times of the year it's really difficult, but we just have to be, again, realistic
Hmm.
and say to yourself, some people give themselves a cheat day or a cheat meal or whatever, but as long as you're moving and your overall is moving in a positive direction, you can
Yeah.
allow yourself to have those kind of little rewards. And I always use that even with the students when it comes to things like time management, when it comes to their work. I say, like, cut out maybe TV or any kind of Netflix stuff during the week, and then reward yourself on the weekend when you get everything done. Try to find a balance between, I know I'm not going to get to sleep until a certain hour if I'm binge watching the show or if I'm on my phone this amount. But then you eventually get to the point where you start to say, like, this is the way I got to figure it out. I got to find a balance in my life. And that could be for fitness. It could be for weight loss. It could be for learning how to do a new thing. It could be anything, whatever goal you're setting, as long as you are realistic with the approach. And even at different points in your life, like, I know I can't do the same thing I would be able to do it 10 years ago. My body's just not going to respond the same way. Plus I have 3 kids,
Hmm.
right? So there's no way I'm going to be able to go on a bike or go to the gym. Like, I cut out going to the gym because I'm just like, I can't, or I think whatever. I probably can if I woke up really early or whatever, but I'm not going to. That's
That's not your
job.
jam.
No, it's not.
And
That's
that's
your
okay.
jam. That's but my wife just bought bought for me for Christmas a Peloton bike, which I was completely against at first, but I got on there, and
Good job.
and a special yeah, okay, Amira, and so she buys the bike, and I go on there, and I'm struggling with strapping on these shoes. I mean, but it's a complete, complicated mess. So I get on there, and I've gone on the bike several times, but not on that bike. I usually go on. I barely sweat. I'm just watching a basketball game, and I'm like, oh, I worked out for an hour, but I maybe went like 2 miles or something. I'm like barely pedaling. I'm sitting still basically, like you said. Oh, only someone. I'm on the bike. So the Peloton, you're on there, and it has the people that are in the room with you, and it has you ranked.
Oh, your
And it has
competitive nature came out?
so it has like your name or your username, and mine's like D Richie on there. So I'm like, people are like, I'm thinking everybody on there knows me or something, which nobody knows who I am. And it says New Jersey, and it says 30. Now I'm 39 and like a half, but it says 30. So I'm thinking everybody on there thinks I'm probably 30 on the day. And then I see people ahead of me who are in their 40s, and I'm thinking they're 49, right? So I'm like, and these people are beating me, and then I'm thinking, and then there's like I'm like, these people are way older than me, and I'm getting my butt kicked. So I'm like pouring sweat, and I'm cursing. My wife's like trying to cheer me on. I'm like, can you just go upstairs? I just need to scream.
Leave me
And, like,
alone.
and then the person's trying to, tell me we're gonna move up 5 miles. I'm like, go F off. I'm screaming at the screen. I use a pretty girl. I usually use her. Allie Love, if you're listening. I exercise to you. but it's a thing where, again, like, it's 20 minutes, I'm pouring sweat, and it's a funny kind of thing, but it is something that kind of works. And then I could fit that into my schedule, and I could do it in the morning, or I could do it in the afternoon or the night. It works out quick. I'm pouring sweat, and it's something that, like, again, the competitive side, like, that's the thing for me. I was like convincing myself, oh, on the bike, just watching something on TV, this is fine. And now I'm on this thing, and I do 20 minutes, and I wind up burning more calories in 20 minutes than I do in an hour.
Well, one of the easiest ways to even get started in anything is, one of the tricks I've enjoyed over the years is, in 2 minutes from now, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 5 minutes worth of that thing.
Yeah.
And it's usually a thing that you don't want to do, be it schoolwork or exercise or prep some food or whatever it might be, clean the dishes. But then you're doing that thing, and then the next thing you know, the 5 minutes have gone by, then you're doing it, then you're like, you know what? I should be doing this. And the next thing you know, an hour's passed. So, and if it doesn't, you could say, you know what, in another 2 minutes, I'm going to do another 5 minutes of that thing. And it just escalates from there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It is getting up and just doing it, though.
Yeah.
But I forget what I was reading. I was reading something, and it was like, it seemed like the most bizarre thing, but they were like, speaking to yourself in the third person, which sounds crazy, and don't do it out loud. They're saying, like, talk to yourself about it, but like saying, like, Alima, you need to get up and you need to go to the gym. And that's what I do in the morning. Like, my alarm goes off and I don't want to hit snooze because I don't want to wake up Mr. Put Up. And I'm like, Alima, you need to get up and you need to go to the gym. And I just roll out of bed and I go, because it's like, if I say I need to get up, I'm like, but do I? But do I,
Yeah.
So again, like, just trying to shift your way of thinking and trying to put it like in another way so that you're motivating yourself to do it. Because I know that was something that the kids were saying, like the lack of motivation to do certain things. So like finding the things that motivate you, which again, you're saying your competitive nature, being an athlete like all your life, that's something that works for you, and you know that Peloton works. For me, going to CrossFit, it works because it's a community. Like, I know that I'm going to my 5:15 a.m. class. I know that it's going to be the same people, and I know that if I'm not there, they're going to be texting me like, why didn't you get out of bed? So that's what works for me.
That's what Dee loves, is what Dee's my wife. And but that's what she loves about a group fitness, sort of situation, is that she ends up becoming everyone's mom, and she looks after everyone. But it's she loves that community and being a part of something like that. For me, I'm a loner. I need to go and I just to know that I'm all by myself. My life is about soundtracks. If I need to write, if I need to do something, go out for a walk, exercise, I have very specific soundtracks a playlist that as soon as I start to play, that's it. All bets are off. But typically that's when lately I've been picking up injuries. So yeah.
I think the other thing with it, I've always found it helped myself, and maybe you guys can speak on it, is writing things down. I find has always helped me. Like, it holds myself accountable. Yeah. Like, if let's say it's a fitness thing, because that's like an easy thing to use. If I write down like what my exercises were, or how much I was lifting, or how much time I was on the bike, or what my weight is, not just see it, but write it down and do it like every day or every week, whatever it is. It's a real thing then. I can't just dismiss it. It's written down and I can see it, even if it's like written on a calendar or something like that. Or if you have like a plan of like, I'm going to work out, these are going to be my exercises for the week, or this is going to be my goal to getting my work done, whatever it is. Oh, yip. That's what you're saying? Yip? What is yip? What a mess.
Here goes the humor. Here goes the humor.
Your first comment is yip on here? You got to be better than that. This is Richie. Jeez.
Yippee.
No, but for anyone out there who is thinking about like just the getting motivated to work out, to change that like part of your lifestyle again, you can see that we're 3 different types of like approaches to it. And you have to figure out what's going to work for you, especially if that's one of the things that you're trying to change going into the new year.
Yeah. Or it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be the new year. It could be at any point you decide to do it. I think that, writing it down, I would say, making a plan, preparing for things, like assuming what your obstacles are, knowing who you are, and knowing like, I got to get rid of this part of, whether it's getting rid of social media or getting rid of certain foods or whatever it is, to say like, that's what you have to start to do.
No, it's all right. So one of the we're just laughing at the message retracted. So see what you did, David.
Lost it.
What the heck was I going to say? Anyway, whatever. I'll think of it in a minute.
But I think it's also, Alima mentioned the community aspect. I think if you get people who are in your corner to support you,
Yeah.
who you could talk to and say, look, to your family, to your siblings, to your friends, to say, look, I'm really trying this, and I want you to help me, hold me accountable. You know, if you see me doing something that's working against what my goal is, you got to help me, stop me. You know, don't allow me, don't enable me, really. Because it's so easy to do that, right? You could have that now, or I'll distract you. You don't need to work on that now. You know, go to sleep later. But you really want to surround yourself with people who are like, you know what? If this means something to you, I'm going to help you. And
That,
I'm not going to text you when you're working, or I'm not going to reach out to you when I know you're working on this thing, and I know you're working on, you know, studying for the SATs or whatever it is, and you have a goal of like, I want to get this score or whatever it is. I'm not going to become a hindrance on what your goals are because I support you, therefore I support your goals.
there's actually a big thing that I've noticed with teenagers, young adults, and I'm guilty of it too from occasion to occasion. And that is, life is treated very much like a bank account, multiple bank accounts. Well, I'm not going to do this right now. I'm going to borrow from this. I'm going to watch more of this and play some of that. And then I'll do some of this later and then they'll fill in the blank and they'll bargain with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes mostly it's a really unhealthy practice, because you're playing with stuff that, if all students were to look back from an older age, were to look back and say, if I'd only just, fill in the blank, done this at this time, focused on this stuff, focused in Mr. Rich's class,
I don't do that anymore.
Lisa really wants to be on the podcast, by the way. She's like, I want to speak to Mr. Richie.
Great.
But again, I think that we can all look back and think of things like the
course.
what ifs and changes. But I think that you have to know that, again, you can't go backward. So it's like, what can you do now to make those changes, to move forward, to find that path that you were talking about, that maybe it wasn't a direct route, but you eventually get there. And I think that that's what's important.
And that might be the reason you turn out best, right? I think sometimes people stress this, like, I need to be on this path, and if I'm not on the path, then everything is going to be doomed for my life. And what you need to realize is sometimes when you veer off the path, it's what you learn from that failure or that stress or that, alternate experience that shapes you to becoming passionate about something, to finding more meaning in your life, and saying like, wow, if I didn't have that experience, which at the time was terrible, I thought this was going to be, my life was over because, maybe I couldn't afford college and I had to take a year off, and I thought my life was over. But because of that, something so profound happened in my life, and I learned something else, and I found this path, and I realized, then I went back to school later and it didn't matter. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. So in the moment, there's a story. I don't know. I might have mentioned on here once before. It's like, it's about like a horse farmer or something like that. No, it's like a farmer. And it's in this book that my daughter has called Zen Shorts, which it's like my favorite book that she has, and has these little like proverbial stories in it. And it's about, this is kind of loosely it, but it's about a farmer who, his horse runs away, and the neighbor comes over and he goes, oh, that's terrible. I feel so bad for you about your horse that ran away. And he goes, who knows what's good and who knows what's bad? The next day, the horse comes back with a bunch of other horses. And he's like, oh my God, what great fortune you have. And he goes, who knows what's good? Who knows what's bad?
I remember it.
The next guy.
This was an early one.
Yeah. Then the next guy, his son's riding the horse, and his son breaks his leg. And he's like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Your son broke his leg. He goes, who knows what's good? Who knows what's bad? The next day, they come to enlist his son for the services, and he can't go because he has a broken leg. Oh, you're so fortunate. And it just keeps going and going and going. And the whole idea of like, we might get so bogged down in that moment of what is a good experience or a bad one, that we don't realize that long term, that could be the complete opposite. We don't even know what's going to happen next. So you might get injured, you might have a bad grade, you might have a bad experience with a relationship or breakup, whatever, but we're only thinking about it in that moment. And you can't get ever too high and you can't get too low on yourself based on that experience. Just say, we'll see where we go from here. And I think if you're not keeping your eyes open, if you're not staying somewhat optimistic about better days ahead, then you might be missing out on that negative becoming a positive.
Yeah, I can only say that from someone, if I was to write down, and I'm, what's my story? My story is nothing compared to some lives of people that have lived. But if I was to write down all of the hardships, all of the crazy stuff that I've lived through since the beginning, it's a heck of a story, and a lot of heartache and a lot of catastrophe and a lot of things that on one hand, I wish I could undo. But in looking, and I've said this multiple times, in looking back today, I would not be who I am. I wouldn't love the way that I love. I wouldn't be the way that I am. It would delete me,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I wouldn't undo anything. As hard as some of those things might be, I think some of those things are also for other people to they need to overcome in their way as well.
But
Yeah.
talking about overcoming things, like that takes us back to the question that we had about like obstacles or
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Right.
it is,
Yeah.
right? Do you often consider the obstacles or things that may interfere with you achieving your goal? And I'm wondering, like for each of you along the course of your lifetime, like were you considering obstacles as you were trying to goal set and you were trying to like make changes and do things over the course of your lives?
Early on, no, never. I never thought beyond my nose really.
Yeah.
As far as like high school and even college, I never thought too much about it. I had, it's crazy now because like I have anxiety now, but I didn't have that at all when I
Mhm.
was younger because I never cared about what was next. I just felt like it would take care of itself at some point. I just said, yeah, I'm going to college, but I never really cared where or to do what. And I just said, okay, I'm going. I went to a school. I picked a major. I just went through it, and luckily it worked out. But you know, I just kind of fly by the seat of your pants type of thing. But then as I got older, I became much more of like a regimented over planner, if anything. We're to the point where if the plan didn't go according to what I wanted, that would become a problem
Yeah.
because I wanted the dominoes to fall exactly the way they were. And if somebody moved one, it would disrupt me and it would rattle me. So I would always think about obstacles, but even when you think about the obstacles, there's always unknown factors that you can't control, and that becomes frustrating, like other people, like
The external
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Like, it's
exactly.
not
There's
about you.
there's too yeah, there's too many other factors that you can't control. So then it becomes pandemic, whatever. There's so many things that we have to just deal with.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would say much more now. I always think about that. It kind of almost like to the point of like a doomsday scenario. And as much as that's been productive for me to get to where I am, it's not like the most stress-free way to live.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah.
What about you?
So for myself, very much we went to the same school. So I I very much just flew by the seat of my pants, and I just never had a plan. Like I said a couple of shows ago, I was walking up the landing in my home, and I looked down. Mum was combing her hair. What about this design college? And I'm like, sure. Like kind of next thing you know, I'm in college,
yeah.
and then I'm an apprentice. These days, it's funny. I'm like the I would align myself more with, well, I'm not going to say it because it's all going to come out weird. So I'll just, what happens is I've gone through so much life now that sometimes told my kids, so I'll say that growing up, I believed in like Santa Claus, Bigfoot, UFOs, whatever it is. Well, I still believe in UFOs. They're out there. The truth is out there. Um, I believed in all this stuff, but then for me as an adult, there was just a lot of magical things happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I had a complete open-mindedness. So
Yeah.
all that happens for me these days is the more open-minded I am, the more open I am about a situation, about not getting my own way, about, okay, this didn't happen when I thought it would happen. Things do happen. They just happen in a different way.
Yeah.
So, too many things to list, but abracadabra.
But it's also like they say about like, you know, when you least expect it kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
And if you don't, if you want something, but you don't sit there and stare at it or look for it constantly, maybe that's when it shows up. So you just kind of like live your life in the meantime instead of just sitting there like tapping your wrist, like, where is this thing? Where is this thing that I want? Why isn't it here yet? Why isn't it here yet? Like, let it just.
So I stopped looking at the crypto today.
Hasn't been good lately.
It's like the little.
It went up a little bit.
At what time? Today's competition is what time did they talk about crypto?
The 48-minute mark. What about you, Alima?
I was always the anxiety-ridden person
Yeah.
who, if things didn't go my way, like I was the person that, I'd miss a shot in a game and then be like, whoop, I'm not shooting anymore tonight, And it's like, I was that person. And it's like, no matter how many people told me, like, it was okay, you can miss a shot. If you're not taking a shot, you can't make one, you know? I still was always the person that was in my head. And I can still see some of those like traits and characteristics still within me today. But I think that now I'm more aware of it and I can control in it. And it's more so like, all right, like it'll just happen, and whatever happens, I have to deal with it. And one thing that I actually sent out to my kids and parents last week, and I got an email back from a parent the other day. I forget the woman's name. Maybe it's like Gretchen Rubin. She's an author, and she said, think of your day in quarters. And I was like, oh, I'm a basketball player. I can definitely think of my days in quarters. And it's like, think about it that way, because then if you have a bad morning, it's okay. If you have a bad midday, it's okay, because you're just looking to the next quarter and trying to get out of it, And I think that we have to do that. And that goes to being like goals and making them attainable and like setting like kind of limits on things. That if you even think about your day that way, you could change your whole perception of your day. You wake up and you stub your toe and you're like, oh, my day's shot because this is how or I woke up late, So just thinking about like recentering and thinking about your day in a different way and how that can change things, you know?
That's a good point. Especially if it comes to like setting a goal and working towards it. Just say, get me through this part. Like, let me get to the end of the school day. Then let me get to this evening. Let me get to this thing. If you, again, almost like I think that's a good, I've never thought about
that
breaking up a day that much.
That self-talk is pretty terrible, because I've heard so many people, and I've said it myself, great, now the whole day is gone.
Right.
Because something happened, or you didn't get your way, or someone said something they shouldn't have. But it's crazy how much weight we put into an instant.
Yeah. I think another thing that kind of speaks to this whole idea, because we kind of gotten into it a little bit, the idea of goal setting. It is nice to have goals. We should always have long-term goals as much as our short-term goals, but not just long-term goals. We could say like we want to be this, but you always have to kind of think about the process too. You don't want to look back and say like, I cut out some significant moments of my life because I was too fixated on this, because maybe you could have wound up there with a little less stress or with a little more friendship or whatever. And just, I'll give a quick story that kind of goes with this. Maybe any students who are listening or people listening might be able to learn something from it. But as I mentioned, I was very like carefree throughout high school and then even in college. And because I was so carefree and I was very social, I was going out. I didn't really care about my grades that much. And the thing is, I teach students who like exclusively care about their grades.
Yeah.
And because I didn't care about my grades, I wound up, I had like a 3.1, 3.0, 2.9. I got like a couple A's, mostly B's, a couple C's. And I didn't care really. I was just like, whatever, that's fine. And it was good on the basketball team. It was good because it was one of the higher GPAs, but in terms of like the education program and the English program, it was the lowest by far.
Yeah.
So as far as those instructors, they did not like that I was like that at all. They wanted me to care more. They wanted me to show more passion. They wanted me to have some get up and go about their classes. And I just didn't.
Yeah.
I was just like, it doesn't matter. I don't really care. That I was not a good student. We'll put it that way. And then because of that, I remember my one teacher who was like against me and like everything I stood for as far as like my lackadaisical attempts. He was like, I'm not going to let you student teach. If I don't give you a good grade in this class, you're not going to be able to student teach. If I give you a C, you're going to drop below a 3.0. You can't teach. I was in Pennsylvania. And I was like, whatever. I think I wound up getting like a B minus and I wound up having a 3.1. So I was able to student teach. But because of that, my education teachers, they kind of like tried to punish me by putting me in like the worst placement for like student teachers. So there's a school that was a middle school that they never put anybody in. It's like supposed to be like the roughest school. So they put me with 8th graders there that were like I had kids with tattoos. It was just like they were 8th graders, like bigger than me. I was like, whatever. And then they put me in a high school, and they never give student teachers seniors. They gave me seniors because they're like a couple years younger than me.
That's it.
And they gave me the worst class in the school. The school was like 3,000 kids. They gave me the worst class in the school, where kids are literally just there until they turn 16 to drop out. So they're just there until they turn 16. That's the only reason the class existed. And it was block scheduling. So because I had been like a screw up in their mind, and because I had that cavalier attitude, they put me in those settings, and I fell in love with teaching. Like, I love those kids. Like, I would stay after school. I'm like, thank you for giving me these. They thought they were punishing me.
Yeah.
Right. This is why we say, like, it'll be okay.
That's right.
They gave me classes that they thought would break me and be like, we got you. We told you weren't ready for this. And I wound up becoming like, I didn't care when they came in to observe. They would be like, when do you want me to come and observe? And I'm like, whenever you want.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not going to be any different because you're showing up. And I would sit there with the kids, and they would hang out, and they would stay after school. These kids, their families were in gangs, and they were just like in rough areas. And I just loved these kids. And I would stay after and help them. And I would, even with my seniors, they would tell me like horror stories about their lives. And some of them were going to great schools, and they would just be like, we're seniors, we don't really care, but we'll talk about Shakespeare and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. Thanks. I understand what you're going through. You're graduating in a couple weeks. But I love the interaction with those kids. And that's when I realized this is for me.
Yeah.
Like, I love this. Like, I could do this.
Was it because you felt you could make a difference first and foremost?
That was a part of it, but just the interaction and the idea that, especially with the middle school kids, I knew they wanted somebody there that took an interest in them, that would stay after school with them, a role model type, somebody that they could be like, hey, this is cool, just even to like hang out with. They didn't want to go home. And I wasn't going to punish them for that. So I was like, yeah, I know I can technically leave now, but I was like, I'll stay after. The other teacher would like, look, they want you to stay. Is it okay if you stay for 45 minutes? They'll take the late bus. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And they would just stay. We would do some work. They would like do skits from the Chappelle Show or something. That was real big. And they would like, and they just had a blast. And I still have like pictures with them and everything. But literally what was attempted at what could have been a really tough time in my life wound up being like life-changing for me.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the people who had all the straight A's and things like that, when they would get observed, I would see them out in the hallways crying, not because just because they were so stressed out about everything. They're like, oh my God, the one student didn't raise his hand and he talked out loud and I didn't know what to do. And I think I'm like, none of my kids raised their hand and I don't care. Everyone's talking. I'm like, they're engaged. They're just, and I'm like, this is all good. I didn't care. Like, that kind of personality lent itself to being a teacher too, and one that was not going to be like I was like barely smarter than some of them in my seniors. I'm like, I was learning the stuff the day before just to get by, and that's when I realized like how important education was too.
Yeah.
So then I started to like ramp up my learning, and I had to like teach myself everything because I didn't pay attention in school, but I saw like I need to be smart for these kids, and that's when I cared about learning, because before I was like I don't need it for me, but now I needed it for them. So you see how like even situations that you think could be that you're not prepared for, like let your life kind of have a little bit of flexibility and spontaneity to it.
You need to bounce off the walls a little bit through life. You need to have those situations that you wish didn't happen. They're gonna happen. And you're going to be wiser for them. You're going to be tougher for them. Not always. Sometimes you might fall apart as you're kind of going through it all. I've gone through my fair share, said goodbye to situations that, even now it just kind of sends a chill as you relive these things. It's tough to go through. But again, I wouldn't be with my wife now. I wouldn't be living this life now. It's a song in there somewhere.
Living my life like it's golden.
There you go.
Living my life like it's golden.
Who's Salima's audio here? Add some audio track. But I think it more than anything, it builds character. And look, you're going to be doomed to make the same mistakes again and again and again. If you go through these things that you don't want to go through, you don't learn anything, right? You're gonna create that same mistake for yourself again. So have those goals for sure, and but you don't need to have your life planned out. That's one of the biggest things That's one of the biggest things I try and tell my students all the time, because that's one of the, I don't know what I'm going to do. How can I do it if I've never done it before? Well, there's going to be a first time,
Yeah.
you know, and it might be that you're just in this class just to hear me say, you know, those words, that you don't need to learn that skill for that thing that you're going to earn all that money in one day, whatever it is that you're destined to do. Yeah, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, especially because they might think that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
And then it winds up being the best thing. And that's the
Absolutely.
point. Like, just allow yourself to go through experiences, learn from them. And even if you think at the moment this is a terrible thing, just realize that if you have the right attitude, it could become a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it kind of reshapes you in some way and it makes you more resilient or whatever, gives you some grit, I think that you could turn things into a positive. It doesn't have to be the end of your life. It could be the start of it, really.
And everything's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. And
Yeah.
I think that that's what we hope for, and
Yeah.
that's not the reality of it. And it's
Yeah.
like, for anyone out there who's like feeling trapped, you don't feel like you have a plan, it's like, take the time to think about what's going to make you happy. Take the
Yeah.
time to think about the things that would positively affect you, the things that you think would be a positive shift in your life. Figure out what that is and then go for it. Like, that's what you need to
Yeah.
start doing.
Yeah.
I cannot count the number of times, and this is a goofy thing, but I cannot count the number of times that I've been going through life and I've been wanting to do something and it's been falling apart, and I'm like, this doesn't look like it's shaping up. And over the years, I say to myself now that, and sometimes it's forced, but I say to myself now that I'm really excited to see what else is going to come, because I'm still putting in that positive effort. I'm still moving forward. I still want to be, you know, whatever that thing is, to make a difference or what have you. So look, the iteration of this, even though we're talking on the podcast, there's a lot of energy that's gone into this thing, and it just needs the right amount of time, the right stuff to be placed, and you know, who knows, but again, I'm excited to see where things will go with time. So that's what I like to say to myself when things are falling apart. All right, life has, or some might say God, I say life, whatever. I know there's something out there, but to each their own.
Yeah. Well, listen, everybody, we appreciate your what do we got? Any input there? We got to catch up on.
That's it.
Oh, Amira left.
Yeah,
had
she had
finals.
said some.
Yeah, well, Mr. Putup said good luck for all of us.
Yeah.
So again, even for the college student, yeah, good luck with the finals. Welcome home when you come back from school. You know, reacclimate with the family.
For anyone who's struggling with the holidays, if it's a difficult time for you, again, like, allow yourself to feel that way. Don't feel that you have to enjoy them like everyone else, and just make the best of what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if any of you want to get together or just listen to someone ramble over the holidays,
There you go.
Well done, Putup.
Classic.
yep. You know, maybe over the holidays I'll just come on, and if anyone's feeling a bit lonely, I'll be around anyway just to say hi, fill you in on what's new. So, but when are we back? But what, maybe the first week? Oh, January the 10th. I'm taking my citizenship test, so I might be American next time. I'm gonna have a whole different accent.
Yeah.
Y'all.
Draped in the American flag.
Yeah.
Everyone stay well.
Yeah,
Be good
please.
to yourselves. Be positive,
Yeah.
and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're doing
Happy
great.
holidays.
I was just
Enjoy the
gesturing
new
to
year.
just because that looks a bit suspicious. I was gesturing to a big American belt buckle.
Yeah. Texas felt.
That's it. That's it. Cow horns.
We're getting off track.
Have a nice night.
All right, everybody.
Thank you, Michael.
Until next year.
All right. Peace.